hey, I'm Chitale, like the James Bond thing, was that your calling card when you started out?
Don't underestimate the power of a halwa is what worked better for me.
I have high appreciation for that because my surname also ends in Ada.
Correct.
And you've done great service to everybody's surname ending in Ada.
Why fix if not broken is a very Japanese proverb that we are fond of. So it's something that sticks with us. The salty snack category in India is about a 45,000 crore market. And we are expecting it to become a 1 lakh crore market very much into the early part of next decade. With the rising economy in India, a more conscious middle class coming to India, and where a per capita income is going to be about making informed choices. We become the informed choice rather than the impulse choice. So enabling brands with tech is something that I corrected as a cycle inside my life, and I think many things have started becoming better. And when there is a repeat sale is when I think all your efficiencies and Six Sigma and Lean and all of those things at your plant start making sense. Pune, since the pre-independence time, has always been a very, very significant place for policy and policy level thinking. So respecting that legacy of the city was also something that we wanted to create as a platform, and that is why we have the Pune Public Policy Festival. We have as a topic this year is about enabling that $10 trillion economy. But when we reach $10 trillion economy, I think one of the big challenge I personally see is that the per capita income is not going to go more than $6,500. So climate security is my biggest concern. We can have all sorts of debates on theories about what is true and what is not. The reality is that the common man is suffering. So where do our subsidies get directed? And where do we actually promote entrepreneurship? Right. Where we have the ability to disproportionately move from $2,500 country to a $10,000 country, which I truly believe India should be. 50 elections in a world. It was the year of the elections as it was being touted. And of that, over 75% saw a change of power. So all of these permutations, combinations into 50 into every multiple is just so many combinations coming into the picture that we have to be patient about it, because we are already in the middle of a war, which can spill over anyways.
Popcorns being GST taxed, and there are so many memes floating around. So from a food industry, how are you looking at it? Welcome to today's episode of 42 Talks, where we try and get you an answer to everything. As we close in on 2024, our guest for today is Indranil Chitale. The Chitale surname needs no introduction if you're from Maharashtra, but is making global strides as they take their food brand across the world. They're famous for their Chitale Bakarwadi, something that you should have tried by now. If you haven't, you've missed some simple pleasures of life. Now, Indranil is an engineer who joined their family business as a fourth generation. He's taking the brand global through use of technology and innovations, and he's redefining their age-old mithai business into a business driven by brand and distribution. It was during his stay at the Harvard Business School that he got fascinated by the potential policy can have on businesses. He, along with his fellow volunteers, have kickstarted the Pune Public Policy Festival, which now in its second edition intends to discuss how India can become a $10 trillion economy. So welcome to today's episode of 42 Talks with Indranil Chitale. Indranil, welcome to today's episode of 42 Talks. You actually need very little introduction, or maybe your surname needs very, very little introduction. It's a name that is synonymous with most households in Maharashtra, at the very least, I expect. And many people are getting to know your name outside Maharashtra as well. Correct me if I'm wrong over there.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. So I think it's the family name that needs no introduction.
Yeah.
I'm just taking care of the legacy.
Yeah. So we can start on a fun note over here.
Yes.
Hey, I'm Chitale. Like the James Bond thing, was that your calling card when you started out? I'm Bond, James Bond.
I think it worked. So the time when I joined the business was also around the time when that Shah Rukh Khan movie had just launched, where I think he plays a halwai. I think Chennai Express.
Achha.
So that way, don't underestimate the power of a halwai is what worked better for me rather than I'm Chitale, James Chitale or something like that. So yeah, I think I use that to my advantage.
But funny, since we are on the word Chitale, we recently had this huge, it was a surprise collaboration for many of us. We did not see Sachin Tendulkar associating with Chitale in our minds. And when that ad launched, it went viral very quickly.
Yeah.
And the last one that came out in that series, wherein he explains the director अरे तुम्ही पुण्याचे ना, मग चितळे नाही चितळे. So I have high appreciation for that because my surname also ends in ळ.
Correct.
And you've done great service to everybody's surname ending in ळ, more than the brand Chitale as well. But let's start from there. I think we cannot go without taking the whole story of the Chitale enterprise in one breath. It's a long story. You are the fourth generation who is doing the Chitale, and this is your 70th or 75th year?
So 75th of Chitale Bandhu.
Chitale Bandhu
And
as an enterprise.
84th for 85th actually for Chitale Group and BG Chitale, which is still the oldest company inside the group.
Yeah. And you've gone through a brand revamp for that reason. So tell us, what's the new Chitale Bandhu look like? What is your new vision for that? And we will get into the legacy part of it. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of stories over there. But let's start with, what is Chitale Bandhu today? What is this new thing that is happening? Why is Sachin Tendulkar suddenly the face of Chitale Bandhu and other things? Tell us all about this now.
So Chitale Bandhu is a 75-year young brand which is into food manufacturing. And we operate a omni-channel business where we started first with the retail business where we now operate about 120 franchise stores across the world. So this includes in Maharashtra, Goa in India, then the North Americas, in Middle East, UK, and also in Europe, and now recently in Australia. Besides that, we are also operating in a couple of airports and also in process where we'll be starting with many more public sector avenues like metro stations as well. So that's one line of business. The second line is where we are distributing our product, where we package and distribute. And this is available across about 11 states, 4 to 5 union territories. And we reach a couple of lakh retailers through this marketplace. The third is through the network of modern trade and quick commerce, e-commerce, where we are servicing our customers not just through a direct channel but through a modern trade channel where we are stocked on the shelves and people buy it, or we are stocked on the app or the transaction page and people buy it. So that is another line of business. And it also includes our own e-commerce business into it. And besides that, we are also exporting to more than 60 countries now. And that's why the product mix that we do changes as per geography. We are ethnically or identically very much a Maharashtrian brand, and we continue to make many products which are Maharashtrian in nature. But along with that, as we service wider geographies, we are also making products which are not necessarily Maharashtrian but very Indian in their nature. But recently, we've also migrated to a point where we are now doing more Western products which are for the global markets. So that's why we are an omni-channel brand where we are making different products ranging from sweets, snacks, bakery, and meals as well. So that's where the Chitale Bandhu Mithai Wale name got transformed into Chitale Bandhu, where the family continues to operate that. The original two brothers who were the founder of it are their families continue to operate the business, and that way we service clients over different channels. So that is where the transition happened. And I think amidst this transition, as our business outside Maharashtra, which is our erstwhile geography of operation, is growing, there was a connect that we need to build with newer audiences and newer customers across the world. So establishing that connect is where I think the association with a brand ambassador was something that we were pondering over. And I think Sachin Tendulkar came as a very natural association for us, simply because that way he also embodies the very same sentiment that we are trying to achieve in the next coming years, where we are Maharashtrian by nature, we are available and accepted and on a quality standard global in our approach, and that way likable, which is something that he is very well known for, and what we try and wish to achieve in the next 10 years now.
Super. I mean, that ad was it got such a huge reception once it launched, because first of all, for two reasons. Two very likable brands. All of us love it. Yeah. In fact, this is a podcast that we shouldn't have go on without me asking, would you like some Bakarwadi before we start? Absolutely. This is totally unsponsored. We have a bunch of Bakarwadis, and this podcast, if we don't have it will be huge injustice to the product that Pune prides on.
If I knew this was what we were going to talk about, I would have also got the mini Bakarwadi packing with the Sachin photo. So
let me open this for you. Yeah. Would you like some? So we can keep it here for sure. But I mean,
I'll have as we speak.
Yeah, absolutely. See, though no chit chat has gone beyond the Bakarwadi. And I want to kind of come down because the ad itself says
Correct.
Bakarwadi manje Chitale Bakarwadi, right? So what it is saying is some brands just become synonymous with their hero product. This is definitely your hero product. So it makes no point going further without discussing Bakarwadi. I'll tell you some 2-3 anecdotes from my life where Bakarwadi has played a role. I've worked with a few multinationals in my earlier career, and every time when I used to travel or people from these countries would come, what do you do in Pune? You do 4 bucket list items, right? You take them to Dagdushet Halwai Ganpati, and on their way back home or when you're hosting them, you definitely get them a pack of Chitale Bakarwadi, right? So the same thing happens when you go, when you go to foreign countries, you're definitely, as a Punekar, you're definitely carrying one.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of non-Punekars here in this room, and they were like all, is it Bakarwadi? So let's get into the history of Bakarwadi. I think it deserves its own time in the spotlight. Who invented? Was it your invention? Is there an IP around it? Is there a trade secret around it? And maybe we can get some secrets out of Indranil on the way out about what makes this particular thing taste like no other Bakarwadi on the market, because many people have started doing Bakarwadis or trying to at least copy Bakarwadis.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Bakarwadi for a while.
See, so Bakarwadi is actually a Gujarati product. That was very popular in Gujarat still today.
Yeah.
And there are many local Gujarati brands who have been doing it probably even before we started doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So it continues to exist. So we can't really do a GI tag on it for Maharashtra. But along with that, it was in the mid 70s that my grandfather discovered this product. He modified that product and he made it very Puneri in nature. And that way, that became a runaway success where, there is a generation who have grown up seeing the board inside the old Chitale Bandhu stores, which was Bakarwadi Sampli, which is like, we are out of stock. So I think it has been a transition for the family as well. And it was not a very well-defined idea, which it is today. So just like, you run a startup. So you understand that, you never know what clicks. And that way, this was one of the products that really clicked well for the Chitale family. And that way, they were wise enough to invest into building capacity for it at the right time and keep making that product available and scalable as time progressed and markets evolved. Yeah. And I think simply because we've been able to do that at the right place, today it is now a category where it's not simply about Bakarwadi and Chitale, but it is all about Bakarwadi as a category where everybody wants to do it. Mm-hmm. And where we sort of get to define the category in terms of how the pricing is, how the sizing is, how the the consumption is happening, how the communication is happening. And that way, owning that category is what we want to try and do. And how do we create more categories where we own the market share or the lion's share of that market is what we want to try and build as a strategy, is where the energy is being focused on to.
See, when my childhood memory, I grew up in Sadashivpet, the old part of Pune city. So my childhood memory is there had to be an occasion to go and get Bakarwadi.
Correct.
Some guests were coming or something like that. And we used to look for the clock.
Correct.
Because Bakarwadi is simply very common.
Absolutely.
So my memory is you go and you stand just before 4 o'clock when the shutters come up.
Correct.
And there are many memes around the 4 o'clock theme as well. I'm pretty sure you've been pestered with that all your life.
Absolutely.
But the shutters go up, you walk in, there is a long queue, and you wait patiently to get, and you used to get them in these white paper bags back then.
Correct.
With blue branding on the top.
Yeah.
And they were piping hot, and you get them home like that. So that's my memory of getting the Bakarwadi. Now, what has happened recently, a recent anecdote is some guests were there at home from outside Pune and we wanted Bakarwadi. And my wife is like, it's 9 o'clock, where will we get it? And somebody in the group said, hey, it's available on one of these quick commerce platforms.
Correct.
And we ordered and we got it. And we were like, oh, we never knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's the changing phase. I mean, from standing in a queue for the shutters to go up to now saying it's everywhere now. You go to the airport, you have a store which will probably be selling a Bakarwadi in Maharashtra for sure. So what's this changing phase? Like, are you gearing up for the new age of business? Do you think this is overexposure for a product which sometimes there's an old world charm, and I'm being slightly nostalgic about this, that, oh, you had, like, for example, there is a bakery, Kayani Bakery. you have to go there, stand in a queue, get it, and then you feel like, oh, I owned it, I earned it. So Bakarwadi had that appeal
Yeah.
in my childhood.
Correct.
I earned it.
Correct.
Now it's available everywhere. Do you
Yeah.
think it dilutes, or do you think that's the new age business?
Well, I don't think so. It's a dilution or it is a new age business call either. I think it is simply a fundamental idea about how a business wants to grow.
Acha.
And I think at Chitale Bandhu, we believe with the idea that we want to improve the food availability across the world. And that's why there is a constant evolution in terms of how we are thinking and looking at food. And also the fact that, how are we simply not improving availability, but how are we also improving the nutrition per gram? Because that is something that we've sort of taken as an internal target that, every product that we are selling, we need to see how we can do it better and how we can be better than what is the alternative in the market. And that way, that is going to be very important as the changing dynamics of business come into the place, where now we've transitioned from the idea of going to a Chitale store and buying to a point of where you and I are sitting on a couch and we are ordering through an app. So this transition is where we've moved from a seller's market to a buyer's market, and now the buyer is anybody with a phone. And where we have all the large operators and even all the large cell phone companies trying to set up manufacturing here, where they see it as the quickest and the most easiest market to see technology adoption. We have to be very mindful about the fact that are we available to the customer or not, where the customer wants to shop. If you are going to be dictating to them that this is the only way you get to shop our product, then we get into the luxury and the niche side of it, which some brands have successfully done, even in Pune as a city or across the world, where you have so many European brands, especially on the fashion side, who are very, very picky about how they want to sell to their customers. But I don't think so food as an idea can be something that you should be picky about. The experience of food can be something that you can be niche in your delivery. But then I think when it comes to packaging and distribution, it is simply about improving your availability and making sure that you just enable the probability of more sale per packets per day per every customer. So if you look at it from that point of view, it is just natural that every brand who's into food and who's already started packaging starts and expanding their horizon of availability and actually ensure that more and more people get to try it. And while more people are trying it, how do you improve on every aspect of why people are buying your brand, and keep consistently improving that so that you retain not just today's customer, but you create loyalty which is over generations, which is what we as a brand have been able to do.
Absolutely. I mean, for the Bakarwadi, I think this is also the fourth generation that is eating the Bakarwadi, not the first one for sure, right?
I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. So the question now is that when you're talking about this scale, and there are big milestones that might have happened in 2024, because you said this was a milestone for you when we were chatting before we started. If you are at the luxury of disclosing how much Bakarwadi gets sold in a day?
Well, I think, at a trade level, we all manufacturers have agreed that, we don't share numbers too much. But, just to give you an idea, the salty snack category in India is about a 45,000 crore market. And we are expecting it to become a 1 lakh crore market by very much into the early part of next decade. So that way, we do have a good share in the market. And what we want to do is how do we reach a double-digit share in that market. So an enabler for that double-digit market share in a 1 lakh crore market is what Bakarwadi is for us, along with many other products like Binge Bar and wafers and many other things that we are doing on a healthier term. So that's where you can probably project what the size of the market and the size of Bakarwadi as a category would be.
So you mentioned health twice in the last three conversations that we had. Is there a reason that you're saying this? Are people moving towards more conscious snacking? And is that a focus when you look at this category, the salty snacks category as well?
So I think one of the things that we at Chitale Bandhu are very mindful about is that, we will not sell a product which we will not consume ourselves.
Achha.
And that has been the ethos even when my great grandfather started the dairy business, where he was like, if you are adding water to the milk, stop doing the business, was his, sermon to his sons who actually started running the business. So that way, when we are that mindful about it, we are also very conscious about who we want to sell our product. So if you notice that, we have never been a 5 rupee player or a 10 rupee player. We've always been a 20 rupee and above player in the market, simply because we don't want to cut corners on quality or just simply reduce grammage and sell a substandard product. So most of our products are now made without any palm oil. They are always in groundnut refined oil. They are baked in healthy fats, which are milk based, not necessarily oil based. And that way, what we want to try and deliver is that, the customer that we want to try and target is somebody who's conscious about what they buy, and not simply about, filling their hunger or filling their immediate impulse hunger, but somebody who's conscious in terms of sticking to a brand, because the brand is what is going to continue, the products will continue to evolve. And that way, a family buyer where, the mother or the father who's going to make a decision that, is this something I'll feed my family, is where we want to appeal, rather than saying that, this is something that I want to have when, I'm just leisurely enjoying, and it is about that impulse satisfaction of hunger rather than a nutrition that is coming out of it. So we are very particular about it, and I think we've seen that with the rise of social media,
Yes.
and a lot of social media influencers who are targeting many companies which are probably larger or in different categories than us, using certain particular products which are bad for our health, and those sales are hitting not because we are marketing them, but because there is a environment being created about people being conscious. So how do we use this trend and actually increase the scale where, with the rising economy in India, a more conscious middle class coming to India, and where per capita income is going to be about making informed choices, we become the informed choice rather than the impulse choice. And that way, that is what is a category we want to be in, and that is why quality is something that is going to be very, very consistent about what we deliver, and improving that is something that we want to do as a food brand.
See, I'll tell you another anecdote of what a healthy Bakarwadi looks like to some people.
Yeah.
I was at a wedding recently, and we were standing in the buffet queue at a 5-star hotel, and they had a salad at the beginning of the food buffet, and it was a Bakarwadi salad.
Yeah.
So people had crushed Bakarwadi, added tomatoes and cilantro and onions, and that was salad. And somebody right behind me said, "Oh, that's such a healthy way of eating Bakarwadi." I don't know where this is going, but any other such interesting anecdotes?
No, what I
about
would
the
say is that
Bakarwadi?
I think very, very often what has happened is that with the industrialization of food, we have sort of lost the emotion of food. And I think that is a very, very alarming thing that we all Indians need to be very mindful of, because we are adopting more American mechanisms of food consumption than European, for example. I think one of the study that I have seen is that Europeans spend about 45 to 50 minutes on a meal, especially the French.
Right.
In comparison, Americans spend around 25 to 30 minutes. So the rush to finished food is sometimes so high that we lose the intent of what the food is supposed to do to our body. And I think we need to enjoy and relish the food very well. And that is where I think the experience, the ingredients, and the intent with which we want to consume food matters. So that is why we are saying that, we don't want to be into that impulse category at all. We want to be into that mindful category where, whatever you're consuming, you should feel good about it. And when that emotion is good about the food that you're consuming, the borders can be anywhere, where it could be a baked product, it could be a fried product, it could be a cooked product, steam product. Right. I think those are going to change. Those are also going to do a lot to do with the geography of that area as well. But then that emotion is going to satisfy and make sure that the food is very positive on your body.
You said that the business goes through an evolution. The product has remained fairly rooted in its origin.
Correct.
Bakarwadi has seen no variants, no evolution. You probably made a mini Bakarwadi. You probably changed packaging along the way. But is there a big evolution from the product that I had as a child? I don't remember any change in taste or anything. It's been very, very loyal to its roots. So no desire, or are you curbing that instinct to say, hey, let me make a palak infused Bakarwadi and things like that? Is that a policy that you say, let's not mess with a product that is so successful, let's not do anything over there?
So yes and no to both. Achha. I think we've gone through our own deliberations on what we want to do. But now we've sort of formed up on our approach about where we want to change and where we don't want to change.
Okay.
So I think the original product remains the same. We don't want to tamper what's... why fix if not broken is a very Japanese proverb that we are fond of. Yeah. So it's something that sticks with us. But along with that, we also see that with the new age buyers and new age trends that are coming in, the mini Bakarwadi is going to have variants, which will include a palak variant, very honestly.
Okay.
And we are ready with the packaging as well.
Okay.
And that way, the customer for that will be a new age customer and not necessarily in the same geography. So that's why we want the customer to make a choice which is not necessarily based on a point of view which is based on Pune and us expecting that this will happen in UP versus what a UP customer might like and what a Kerala customer like. So we have to see the diversity of consumption, the trends around it, the flavors, the palettes, and see how we can appeal to a localized market as well. So that as a brand, Bakarwadi and Chitale Bakarwadi will remain as the umbrella brand, but there will be variants and there will be flavors which will fine tune to different geographies.
Okay, let's move on from the Bakarwadi.
Yeah.
I think it's a favorite. So we'll keep that aside for a while. Is there anything else in your own portfolio that you like to eat apart from the Bakarwadi?
So we launched a brand called Binge Bar.
Yes.
And we've just set up a new line where we'll be doing 1,000 bars a minute now. So it was like a startup project inside Chitale Bandhu where we sort of validated, we did the product market fit, we added variants, then we changed packaging. We now have a philosophy where we invested into capacity and now we want to market that nationally. So it started doing better in different geographies. We sort of realized that we have to localize it even further.
So this is the product wherein you made bhel in the
namkeens
form of
in
a
a
bar
bar
and things like that.
Yeah,
right? Like I can binge a bhel on the go.
Absolutely.
Right?
So namkeen in a bar is the idea behind it. It's a very simplistic idea. And what we want to see is that how can we make namkeens more easy to eat, easy to be on the go, and that way retain the spicy tradition that Indian namkeens have, and sort of create a window which is more accessible and globalized in its form of consumption. So that's one product that I actually binge on, as the name suggests. And I think lately I have been in a debate internally in terms of we make two products. One is Rasgulla and the other is Malai Mysore Pak. So for the longest time, probably 33 years of my life, Rasgulla has been my favorite. But over the last 3 years, I think there has been a challenger that has come in the form of Malai Mysore Pak. Okay. So I have been very mindful in not eating the entire box in front of me whenever I go to the plant. And I think it's a difficult mind game that I have to play with myself to stay away from it.
Would it be okay to say that you look absolutely fit for being a halwai? Is that a stereotype that I'm breaking?
Well, I think it's just good clothes. That's masking what I carry underneath.
Okay, jokes apart, I think you touched upon the point that you ran the whole binge bar like a startup. I think you're getting into an interesting conversation with how does product innovation happen inside? So you're a legacy business. Why I'm not getting into the whole history part is because people know it so really well.
It has been documented well.
Yeah, it's so well documented. People know. I mean, we've been having Chitale milk for all our life. Then we got into Shrikhand. We've been having. I mean, that's the brand everybody has been buying here in Maharashtra, right? So I don't want to use your time more on the legacy part, assuming that people already know the history or there is enough material out there. But you are kind of putting up a new face of the whole Chitale Bandhu enterprise. You're saying we ran it like a startup. How does a new product idea have its germ of the seed in your conversation? Is there a startup team that is working? Is there a R&D team that is working? Or is it more like conversations on the family dinner table that are happening? Where do they start? How they mature? Would you want to run us through that?
So I think when I started getting more control in terms of how I wanted to run the business from the family, one of the first things I did was start building my R&D team, because we didn't have a R&D team at that time. The R&D team was the Chitale family, and especially the women in the Chitale family, because they were the ones who knew how to perfect the traditional recipe. So my grandmother, that way she has been instrumental in setting some of the recipes that Chitale Bandhu still sells today, like Rawa Ladu or Besan Ladu or something like that. So from that point, moving into a more professional mechanism of how we want to innovate on products, we had to build a separate team, and I had to create a budget for it. So how do we budget for it was one of the first questions that I was posed by the family, that why do you even need it, and then what are you going to achieve as an outcome. And then I ended up speaking to a lot of people who were doing much better in terms of R&D at that time. And they told me that, while you build your team, make sure that they have constraints. And I was like, why should we have constraints? We should be free to innovate all the time. And they were like, constraints and limitations is one of the key ingredients for innovations. Because if you're not suffering from a lack of something, there is no reason which is compelling enough for you to innovate. So then that is why we created a separate department. We created a separate area, and we created them at a very, very minimal budget where, it was just tables and chairs for the certain time and one granite top for them to start cooking different products. And I also spent a lot of time there because it was interesting to see what we were coming up with. And I think when there were no distractions, and the idea was that, let's see how we can improve snacking, because the way the snacking market was growing, what we saw was that it was a far better opportunity to tap into than just trying to sell sweets, where I myself was evolving in how I wanted to consume sweets. So snacking seemed interesting. Innovative snacking seemed even better, and that is how we came up with the idea that let's make chivda bars. And Chiuda bars eventually went into Namkeen bars because Chiuda as a category is a very Western India thing. Namkeens is a more national thing. And then from Namkeens, we got into the idea that, let's build local Namkeens into globalized formats where now, the Bhed bar is a Bombay Bhed bar, what we call, because Bombay Bhed is different than what a Indori Bhed is.
Right.
And a Indori Bhed is very different than what a Delhi style, UP style Bhed is. Right. So how do we sort of create variants into that? What more do we add? What mixtures do we create out of it? And then it sort of evolved where now we are into a little more mature stage than a startup is in terms of the idea that our R&D team works with our marketing team in terms of understanding cues in the market, understanding trends in the market, and then they keep having a constant dialogue where based on that dialogue is what we decide what we want to spend energy and time and resources into innovating. And along with that, the management actually spends time seeing what they are up to and giving inputs about what we should not be doing. Like we took up this initiative where we had 2 or 3 products in our product range which were made in palm oil. But we've now got a full-time expert in oils working with us over the last 1 year, where we have rationalized and we are very sure that in the coming financial year there will be not a single product which is palm oil based in Chitale Bandhu. Now this is an internal R&D measure where it is not about new product development as much as it is about qualitative improvement. Right. But that way, whether there was a market to sell was something that marketing understood differently. Whether there was an intent to sell was what the management understood separately. And where to channelize the R&D was something that both these inputs made sure that R&D was able to understand and put their directions in the right way. And we sort of innovated. And I think what we realized was that when there was a freewheeling R&D section, one of the challenges was that our time to market was much longer. So we've just brought in some systems and processes where now we are very sure that we can launch a new product under 18 months.
Okay.
And we want to bring that down to 12 months. But that is a great goal to have. So we are working towards it because shelf life itself for a 6-month product needs actual 6 months of product to be tested out in real before we launch it. So compromising on that is something that we are mentally not yet ready or we don't have the technology for it. Whenever we find it, we'll probably do it sooner.
Funny that you mentioned that. I'll tell you an internal measure of how we evaluate an idea.
Yeah.
When we want to launch a startup and we will have 10 ideas and we'll say we want to choose one, now we have come down to benchmark it against a pickle business. Correct. So we have created an hypothetical brand. We call it A4 Pickle, Achar, basically. And we say, why are we titrating it against a pickle business? Is because can you create a brand in it? Yes, we can create a brand in it. Then that's one of the tick marks on the checklist. Can you quickly test the product in market, not just at a product level, but distribution? Can you set up a small store and see product market fit? You can do that. Then that's a tick mark in our idea selection.
Your SOP.
Yeah. Then can you scale it? What is the scale of the market? So when you mentioned this, I kind of find the parallels that we are drawing, and I think the achar business is what we always joke around with all our ideas.
And that's why the omni-channel Chitale business is also very crucial. Achha. Like there was one time when I could not find sense in how real estate business was going to survive in the future. Okay. Because I still find it a very challenging business. While it has been a legacy business, I see that there is a big challenge in how real estate costs are eating into the bottom lines of real estate business as a whole. So if you are not having the right inventory churn, if you're not having the right revenue per square feet, and if you're not benchmarking it all the time, it's going to be a challenge. But then in the big picture, when we have multiple funnels where we have real estate, we have distribution, we have modern trade, we have exports, we have e-commerce, which is sort of parallelly plugged into different networks at the same time, we mostly validate our products in the stores. If we see a repeat order which is at a fixed rate, only then we put into distribution. If we see that doing well in our regular good strong distribution markets, we put it into quick com. And then if all of this is doing well, and by that time we have a real time testing of the shelf life, and where we've crossed the 1 year shelf life, is only when next year we put into the export market. So that we have testing and validation across channels and actually see how we can start spending as a brand onto it.
You seem like in a rush of technology, production, efficiency and all. And the question that pops in my head is, what did you train in? Because you knew you were going to get into this business eventually. Was that a childhood aspiration? Oh, I'm going to take this business on. Or did you have any different ideas? Wanted to become an astronaut, scientist, anything else?
Yeah, I still have the ambition where I want to be a pilot. Okay. I wish to make more time for it to finish my flying hours as time permits. But I think I do realize that buying a plane and owning a plane and flying a plane is expensive. So I need a business that feeds into it. Super. So that's why I think being the lala in the business is more important than being the pilot in the business. So that's what I try to do. And I think the ambition was very clear from the start that I would be part of the business. How and what role I would end up taking was something that was not very clearly defined. And I think the idea was simply that you come and enjoy and see where you want to add your energy into. So I trained in engineering. I got
Because you
exposure abroad.
figure out what you want to do in life only after you do engineering. So that is a
So that was
prerequisite,
that was
right?
like the thing.
Yeah.
And just funny enough, I was having a conversation with a friend who's also entrepreneur. That my father always insisted that I should be training into chartered accountancy, which was so he's trained in commerce as well. And that way his idea was that you should be doing that. And I was like, no, tech is something that enjoys me. And I think with chartered accountancy, especially what I've seen even with his friends, is that it's like Bermuda Triangle. You never know when you can get out. With engineering, I was very clear that it might take 5 years or 6 years, but I'll get out for sure.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's aim on surety rather than ambiguity. And I think that was one of the big challenges I have come to realize in the later part of my career life, that we are so defined by engineering in terms of outcome, and business doesn't really work that way.
Right.
And we are not trained for it when we are doing engineering, and we end up spending a lot of time optimizing efficiency in the plant, and we don't spend enough time trying to build business and sales. And that is something that is not inherently taught at when you do technical education.
That has been the slow learning,
and you
in
have to
our
learn it on the
business as
field.
well. Yeah.
And I think last 6 to 7 years of my work, I have spent more time on the field, less time in the plant. And actually that has resulted into us doing better business, but also me relearning everything that I fundamentally knew. And sort of coming to the realization that, at a marketplace, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what tech you're using, what process you're using, what patents you're having. If your product is available, and if it is available at the right place, at the right time, at the right price, only then the sale is going to happen. And ensuring that is the most important thing. And when it is available, creating a customer pull is the second most important thing. So how do we build those frameworks is something that we have to ensure. That is when brands eventually get created and brand value or recall value is generated. And when there is a repeat sale is when I think all your efficiencies and Six Sigma and Lean and all of those things at your plant start making sense. Otherwise, in their own silo, they are not very useful when it comes to running sales.
But you bring a very important point. So I'm pretty sure you infused a lot of your own enthusiasm about technology into your manufacturing. You trained as an electronics engineer.
Yes.
So with all this new industry 4.0 movement that is going on, your plants are really up to date. You have a lot of sensors, IoTs going in. I'm pretty sure you have a huge dashboard that comes to you from all your plants and also from your sales channels, wherein you're looking at everything digitally, right? So coming from a legacy business, how difficult or easy is it to convince, especially when you have elders in the home also being a part of the business, convincing them that, hey, I have new ideas, let's start putting money towards that investment, it's going to benefit the business. Was it a struggle in your case? Because I see a lot of generational struggles within friends and family who are kind of seeing how inheritance of businesses are going to happen.
Correct.
How did it happen in your case?
So I wouldn't say it was a struggle in the sense that, existentially that was not a crisis that I had to deal with.
Right.
And I think that goes to the fundamentals of the Chitale family, where I think we have been very, very adaptable to, adopting new technology all the time. So be it in the 70s where we started pouching milks instead of putting it into glass bottles, or, making Bakarwadi or Peda on automated lines, or putting packaging into the business, or putting RFID into our store business. So adopting tech or spending into world-class activities of tech or advancement was something that the family was not averse to. So it was not new for them. I think the family is always very conscious about doing businesses where there is a chance of failure simply because they don't want their track record to be diluted. And I think it is rightfully so, because, it is a 75, 80-year-old legacy which has been successfully championed or shepherded by them. And you are expected to take care of it, if not, better it.
Right.
So them being conscious about it is rightfully so. And that is where I think you have to put your case in a piecemeal basis. And sometimes you have to be acceptance of the fact that, there is going to be a time where you're Robin Hood. You have to prove your point. If you're proven, you're going to be part of the ruling party. And if you're not, then you probably have to learn and, see how you can be part of the ruling party again. So it's just the law of nature, I would say. And if money starts coming in for ideas you're betting onto, no business family is unwise enough to not invest more money into that.
Right.
So that is how business sense is. But then unless you're just like we call product market fit, maybe we do product market fit not at a store level, we do it at a channel level. But then building those channels is something that we have to prove and make money. And if you're not making money, then we are not that way adding value to the family mechanism of generating revenues. So how do we build that is, I think, something that was not very formalized when we started. I think now we have very formalized in how we approach things, and that way we are very much professionalized in our approach as a family to the business as well, where we are very number driven in culture.
Okay. But were you recruited straight out of campus into your family business, or you did some gigs in between to get real world experience from some other kinds?
So even during my college times, I did not really get a holiday as such, and I would always spend time in
But
some plant or the
never
other.
get holidays.
Yeah, correct. And I never regret. I mean, it was
yeah.
one of the best times I say I would have spent inside our plants, because I don't get to do that with the same freedom anymore. Because at that time I was not the owner or the decision maker, so I was one of the people in the plant, and I was responsible for getting things done. Now I'm more about seeing what people are getting done and doing that. So I would say that was the best time I spent. But I also got to spend time working outside, getting internships outside in different environments in different continents as well. And I think that definitely helped in seeing my mindset about two things. One is that how people operate system-driven businesses rather than people-driven businesses, which is very, very India or a Southeast Asia thing. And second, I would say is that just imagining scale. Because we are such a large country and we have such a large consumption index, we sometimes are very much blindsided by our immediate scale rather than seeing the world potential. And I think we have also evolved as a brand where now we are companies in different continents. We are selling customers which are not necessarily ethnic in India, and that way we are not restricting ourselves to being a Indian food brand itself or Indian food brand. We are a food brand which is based in India, but we will make food for the world. And that is the ambition that we have now.
So any examples of those products that you're making for the world?
So we are now making a health bar for a very popular retailer in the US. And that way, one of the health bar investments that the bar line investment that we did, we sort of figured out that we could occupy the line in much shorter time simply if we started doing this line of work. And we recruited a team who was able to do this white labeling job very well. And I think that has been a good learning for us, because we sort of also realized that, there is a mechanism to de-risk our revenue exposure at a maybe little limited profitability, but also no risk of sale. And complying ourselves to more globalized companies who really operate at a much, much higher volume than we do, and upgrading ourselves in process as well. So that's why I think it's a evolutionary step that is happening. And, maybe by the end of next decade, we would be at a position where, or we want to set an internal target where our non-Chitale branded revenue should be the same as our Chitale branded revenue. And they both will be growing at a very healthy CAGR.
Okay, now you're talking business terms.
Yeah.
So let's deep dive a little bit into the whole business structure. You're a legacy business. So you're not building a business that you seem to kind of design it for an exit or a takeover, an acquisition. It's probably not in your DNA at all. Vis-a-vis, the comparison is there's a lot of market that is evolving in the whole snacking industry, wherein we had this vocabulary, whether you're doing a revenue-based business or a valuation-driven business and things like that. How do you internally structure your, because see, when I have a valuation-driven business as a competitor, I'm talking purely from a competition perspective. If I'm driven by valuation, I'll be ruthless in the market. I'll undercut my margins. I'll probably work at negative margins because I want to just build
market share.
How do you see this new age competition? Because it looks like, if I look at a Shark Tank season, 80% is snacking startups that are coming on Shark Tank, right? And that looks like, there are new brands coming in a gourmet grocery store right around the corner. And so many new brands coming up. So what's the scene like in India for the food market? And how does a legacy business compete with these new age startups? What are the advantages, disadvantages of being in that scene?
No, I think it is a beautiful time to be in terms of the market evolution that we are going to witness. And that way, the beauty behind it is that all old ideas which brought every brand to where we are today will not necessarily be too into the next decade. But while doing that, not every disruptive idea that is being poised as the next big thing on a TV show about startups is going to be a unicorn as well. So that's why understanding the ruthlessness of how startups are thinking, understanding the way they are agile enough to be very quick on their feet. And where I think just yesterday or day before I was talking to somebody, and we got this analogy that startups are like motorcycles in amidst trucks in on the Lonavala Khandala Ghat coming back from Mumbai,
Okay.
where the trucks are in every lane. They're not going to give you space at all.
Right.
And if you're a car, you have no way to be but just behind them.
Right.
So if the trucks are the large MNCs, the cars are the erstwhile players, and the startups are the motorcycles who are get to navigate only in the ghat section. That way, it is still an uphill climb. But that way, the agility to navigate versus the ability to occupy a lane are both going to be important. So which side it tilts is going to be very, very category specific. And that is why not playing each and every field, but rather holding your lane and trying to build something very good in your lane is going to be very important. So that's why this startup culture is going to force all erstwhile brands to innovate.
Gotcha.
And while doing that, leverage their channel to the maximum capacity, which they were never really ruthless about.
Are there any startups that you're particularly like, oh, this, like you have a good appreciation for in the snacking business? Like, oh, they've built a great product, if not anything else.
Well, I think there are many, and I think we are also in talks with many right now.
Yeah,
So it
that
would
was
be,
my next question.
Correct.
Like, does the temptation to say, hey, let me just buy this thing out come to
Well, it's
your
it's
mind?
natural, and that is also going to be a part of our repertoire about how we are going to grow. So, which is why maybe me talking too much about it could be speculative before it is signed. So I
Well,
I
we are
shall
at
do
the
that.
end of the year, so we are
Correct.
reflecting back on the year of your thinking, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So, but it is of course our strategy to grow that way,
Oh,
and that is why we also understand, or rather, I firmly believe that the diversity and all the factors that the Western world is marketing. I think diversity has been the fabric of our country since the origins, and that way we must respect this diversity in the sense that one size fits all approach will never work in India because we are not a very homogenized population.
I totally agree.
So a house of brand strategy is what Chitale Bandhu will be.
Okay.
And that is why the Mithai Wale was dropped. And that way we want an umbrella brand which is going to be Chitale Bandhu, and we could do many brands under that. And that is what, next decade of my life is going to be.
Super. We are also going to talk about the next year or the next
Yeah.
month of your life because we are kind of, I know I've done a little bit of research on your
Yeah.
bio. You did not stop at engineering.
Yeah.
We dropped off the education
Yeah.
thread halfway
Correct,
through,
correct.
but you went on to do an internship or a working
Yeah.
post-graduation in Netherlands, I
Yeah.
believe. And from there on, you also went to the Harvard Business School.
Correct.
And I think it had a big shift on your mindset.
Yeah.
You mentioned that Harvard Business School was a watershed moment in terms of how you evaluated your mind.
Correct.
What was the big experience there? What is the difference? So I want to talk about two things.
Yeah.
The Harvard experience, and then do you want to also kind of delve a little deeper on the education?
Yeah.
Since we are on that note, why not?
Absolutely.
How is education different from India?
Well, so I'll tell you, I'll take a step behind, especially in terms of how Europe and US have both
Oh,
influenced
that's
me.
lovely. That's important.
And I think, as an engineer that way, a long time back, but that way Europe was like the mecca of engineering, especially the industrial age that Europe was able to create post World War II. And I think the continual 6-7 decades of progress that Europe witnessed for the longest time for creating equipment for manufacturing across the world. And that was very fascinating because that is what I grew up seeing in college because we were just scaling at that time as well. So the idea was always that, let's get exposure in Europe. And that is what I was able to get. And I understood processes very well. But then what I also realized around the same time was that marketing was not the best forte of Europeans. And that way, while they were great enablers, they were not great brands. And I think that is the biggest difference between Europe and US, where you have brands coming in at every nook and corner in that country. Not every brand survives, but they build brands there. And I think that thinking, be it at a human level, be it at an organization level, be it at a company level, or be it at a political level, it's the brand philosophy that US markets so well. And just marketing that at a global level, where they are so assertive on the idea of brands, they have been able to build their brands as highly desirable brands across the world.
Absolutely.
Like American brands are sought after in Japan, where if you were to talk about it, 7-8 decades ago they were at war with each other, and now there is this obsession about American brands, or the fact that Korea has adopted the same thing from their playbook, where now K-pop is a global brand and people across the world, especially the younger ones, are adopting them as a brand. So how do we build brands is something that I understood better in the US, and I think that transformed my idea of looking at businesses, building brands as well. And then the fact that US was never lacking in terms of tech, but the fact is that the tech was an enablement, it was not the fabric. So enabling brands with tech is something that I corrected as a cycle inside my life, and I think many things have started becoming better.
My biggest memory of what I felt different from an Indian education and the US education, I did not get educated in US.
Correct.
I went there for a small fellowship. I went at Stanford, and my biggest takeaway was, because I was enrolled in a course which Stanford students were taking. When I was studying in India, I was doing my projects because I wanted to get the degree and get a job. And there, every project that all of us were doing as a group was because we thought that this was the next big company that was going to come out of the Silicon Valley. So that was the mind shift that I had when I came back from there. And I said, entrepreneurship is so cool. It's kind of the biggest, motivation to do something from ground up. That was the big difference that I felt over there. But I agree with you that they kind of have mastered brand building. I mean, I often, it's a snide remark, it's not in the right zest, but look at every single natural feature that they have, how they have marketed. We have Himalayas, the biggest mountain range in the world. We don't call it the mighty Himalayas. They have Grand Canyon. They have the Great Lakes. Everything is grand, great, so I kind of, it's in their DNA over there. Yeah.
And I think also I would got to say that, America as a country was built with a immigrant mindset.
Okay.
And that is something that we probably don't talk about. But I think Europe never came with an immigrant mindset till 2010, when they let in a lot of immigrants come into the country. And I think that is, we are seeing the consequences of it. It's not integrated very well. But America since the 1700s was the idea where, it was the land of dreams and opportunities. And no matter what background you came in from, you had an equal opportunity to success. So I think that is going to be one of the big things that we must learn in India, where, how do we make sure that our population is geared up for success rather than subsidizing them all the time? And how do we sort of empower them to build that with our strong technical fundamentals that we have, where, Indians are successfully running American companies there.
Right.
So there's no shortage of talent.
There.
What we need is an ecosystem that just promotes this at a, 10x, 100x level than what it is doing today.
But talking about ecosystems, we will come to the whole ecosystem policy, ease of doing business eventually. You have been available in US for quite a few number of years. But more recently, you opened your exclusive brand store there as well, I understand. And it's in the Bay Area.
Yes. No, so we have now 13 stores in North America.
Okay.
And we have a subsidiary there as well. So we are retailing in close to
also lovely. So this sets the whole foundation aptly for my next question. Let's talk about how easy, difficult is it to set up a business in US, especially a food business wherein you're manufacturing in India and selling in US. So a lot of regulation, FDA, we hear Indian spices getting banned somewhere because of trace elements and stuff like that. Would you like to share what was the journey about setting up an enterprise in US like?
So fortunately, because we have been exporting to the US since maybe 2005 or 6, we've been audited a couple of times by the US FDA, and that way we are compliant, with their requirements.
Your manufacturing setup in Maharashtra.
Correct.
Right.
And philosophically, we know what not to do, so that there is no regulatory hurdle that comes into the picture. Of course, time and again something comes up, we solve that and we go ahead with it. But there is a system now to resolve that.
Right.
So that takes care of the regulatory aspect of it. I think the compliance aspect of it is where what I see is one of the speediest things, that you can register in one state, you can operate in another state, you can shut down your operations in one state in one day and go to the other state. Shutting down a LLP or a private limited company in India is a matter of shame in society. And it is probably a year-long project.
Right.
So that is where the speediness of business is. And I think the government is also extremely hungry in terms of creating jobs. So that's why they are very happy when any business wants to come in, whether they are employing 5 people or whether they are employing 5,000 people. You are respected with the same idea that, if this is about job generation and tax generation, great, reward them. I think in India we don't say the same thing. Job generation, of course, it is a great thing, but then there are a lot of baggage that comes with it. And I think on a tax generation side, I would say we are as a tax base in India, we are such a small community that we disregard it. I don't have any other words for it.
Okay, so we are segueing into the bigger theme.
Yeah.
You kind of are now a group of folks in Pune who are organizing the Pune Public Policy Festival. What is your interest in getting into public policy? Is it a business? Is it an individual mindset that you are going in with? And what is happening at the Public Policy Festival?
Sure.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So my exposure to public policy happened during the COVID times, where as an essential services business, we had to be very proactive in working with the agencies across the government to define policy about how essential services could be enabled to the consumers while they were locked down. So that was my first exposure to governments and agencies and people in the bureaucracy, and it was much more pleasant than I had ever hoped it would be.
Okay.
Simply because till that point, my opinion, coming especially with a lot of Western exposure, was that just be very clean with your business and keep everybody from the government out, so that 2 extra compliances are better than having people coming and troubling you or pestering you about it. Right. But I don't think so that was a right approach to have either. And what I came to realize working closely in terms of defining policies at that time, especially for milk products and many other food products, where Maharashtra and Pune being one of the first cities to be locked down and opened up as well.
Correct.
We created models inside the city with the help of other individuals as well about how unlocking mechanism came into the picture. And that sort of reinforced my faith in the whole system that our country actually has. And also the fact that there are stakeholders which are not private but government driven, who are extremely committed to the idea of shaping policy very well for the consumers or the common citizen, I would say. But if they are never told what is to be done, or if they are never given an opinion about what is the real constraint of operating in a certain industry, or a real constraint of being a citizen in this part of the neighborhood, they are never actually going to able to have a mechanism to decipher what is right or wrong. And that is why a citizen-led active mechanism, where we talk about different challenges that the country is going to face and make a mechanism where this is documented, presented well, and the right stakeholders who can take decisions on this can be brought in to hear this, talk more about it, and constructive ways are taken out of it, is something that is crucial for the country to move forward. And that is what we have tried to achieve with this policy festival. While doing that, Pune, since the pre-independence time, has always been a very significant place for policy and policy level thinking.
Right.
So be it the freedom fighters in the 20s to the time where progressively Pune has always created good scholars who have thought on the national scale. So respecting that legacy of the city was also something that we wanted to create as a platform. And that is why we have the Pune Public Policy Festival, where we are not simply just talking about Pune. Pune is the place where we want to gather people across the world to come and talk about policy which is going to help create a better India, and where citizens get an active stand to talk about where their challenges are.
You are now in your second edition of the Policy Festival.
Yes.
And again, I'm kind of repeating my last question a bit. Knowing that you will come from an industry background, you might have some grudges or some grievances or suggestions to make the industry better. How does the dialogue between people who will implement a policy take your suggestions into account? Like, is that a very constructive dialogue? Are there formal processes wherein you can write a white paper and say, our industry has this potential, this was probably what was needed, and if you made such policy? Why I'm asking you is because we are coming just from 2 days ago of a controversy about popcorns being GST taxed, and there's so many memes floating around. So from a food industry, how are you looking at it?
There is one part of the industry. There is the other part of the economic aspect of it. We have a country which is very high on disparity, and we have a very low population which is paying direct taxes. So that's why indirect taxation is a mandatory necessity in our country. A country like France adopted GST in 1902 or 1905, sometime early 20th century, and we adopted probably 100 years later. So you can understand that there is a 100-year gap in terms of testing that theory, but it is proven well enough for countries to be very successful post 2 wars as well. So that's why I have no contentions on whether GST should be there or not. But I also feel that there should be a rationalization of GST, because you should not be charging an average consumer too much of taxation, because that sort of creates a complexity where the consumer mindset is not about owning up for the tax but to avoid tax. So how do we create a mechanism where the friendliness of the tax regime actually enables more people to be into the tax regime rather than avoiding that, is something that we have to see. Whenever there is prohibition, whenever there is a defensive strategy around it, it is always the avoidance or black markets that are created, which is a very standard economic theory.
Correct.
So I think my suggestion, especially on the popcorn theory, is that government needs to be very mindful, and probably there are bigger issues to fix than popcorn. So please focus on that.
Oh, but that got such a high media traction just because it was caramelized and
But I think
salted.
credit to the media that
Yeah.
they have picked this issue, that this is not where we should be wasting government energy into.
But I think it's also bringing awareness to public consciousness that, oh, we are spending taxes, so let's have a debate.
Correct.
So if it opens up a conversation, I'm all up for it. But
Yeah.
it should not get trivialized in the forms of memes, is what I'm
So
trying
which is
to
why
say.
what I hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But which is where I also believe that we should not be targeting the agency, or we should not be targeting the person per se, simply because I don't think so that person is single-handedly responsible for any decision that happens.
Okay.
It is a very, very well-tabled process that we have inherited from the British. So that is where representation plays a very crucial role. And that is why every industry, every sector will have its own set of challenges,
Correct.
problems, suggestions.
Correct.
And there are mechanisms where if they are drafted well, presented well, and they are actually followed up well with the people who have the power to make changes, they are very proactive in terms of listening to it and giving it a genuine eye, where the interests of the business as well as the interests of the government are protected. So how do we enable that time and again, and how do we start addressing big pictures around it, where I think what we have as a topic this year is about enabling that $10 trillion economy. But when we reach $10 trillion economy, I think one of the big challenge I personally see is that the per capita income is not going to go more than $6,500. So that way we are still going to have a lot of people who are going to be very challenged in sustaining that $10 trillion economy. So how do we improve the bottom of the pyramid is where economic policy can be thought about, where we innovate and leapfrog and actually ensure that we achieve better results than what is planned. Similarly, the cost of achieving 10 trillion is going to be on the public infrastructure, the health infrastructure, the pollution infrastructure, the green energy goals that have been set, which are the sustainable development goals. While doing that, the trade embargoes and the trade regulations, the global war and the global tensions between different nations, where we as a friendly nation sometimes suffer because of being too friendly. So how are all of these factors going to affect the idea of being a $10 trillion economy is something that we want to try and envisage. Talk all aspects of it, where we do not want to let go and say just talk only business, but make sure that we do it a sustainable business and bring the ability where every person has an equitable chance of improved life is what we want to try and enable with this.
What do you think would be the biggest challenges to get to a $10 trillion economy as a country?
Well, I think one of the big challenges I see is climate. Because being in the equatorial region, I think we have seen that we are far more prone to adverse and harsh weathers than we have been
Seasons
before.
are changing.
Yes.
I mean, I'm always worried, will I get
Correct.
my mangoes this year or not?
So climate security is my biggest concern. We can have all sorts of debates on theories about what is true and what is not. The reality is that the common man is suffering, the farmer is suffering. And if climate security is not great, food security is not going to be great.
Right.
And I think we have 1.5 billion people who we need to feed. It is our moral obligation as a country where we have to feed them properly. And where we have a challenge where 30 to 35% of India's population is malnutrition. So how do we solve these?
Right.
Where if today's next generation is fed healthier in a better environment, we are going to create a lesser load on the ecosystem in the future when these population are old and they demand a lot of healthcare attention. So rationalizing that and investing in today is going to ensure that tomorrow of them is going to be better. And we sort of create a mechanism where, we create a better India than what we got inherited today, just like the family business has been. Yeah. And I think the second aspect is going to be in terms of looking at money objectively. I think we have been a very subsidized nation always. And as a nation, our entrepreneurial spirit has not been up to the mark, I would say, in terms of ambition to be entrepreneurial, because we have always been subsidized. So where do our subsidies get directed? And where do we actually promote entrepreneurship?
Right.
Where we have the ability to disproportionately move from $2,500 country to a $10,000 country, which I truly believe India should be. At a per capita GDP per capita income level, and that I believe is the second big challenge. So if these two challenges are something that we don't innovate onto, we are always going to be forced onto the narrative that the Western world is trying to project onto us. So to avoid that, we need to create the most amount of researchers, we need to create the most amount of funds available for them, and we need to create businesses which are easily able to integrate with research and create business models which are sustainable for it. If this ecosystem is something that is fixed, and if we are able to ensure that the bottom of pyramid is getting better money in their hands, I think India has a far better chance of being a very, very secure $10 trillion economy than what I envisage might not be.
Do you think Make in India is working?
I
Because
do.
you're talking about, I mean, Make in India kind of gets into both the challenges
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you said, and it was a big policy slogan, if not.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about the quality of implementation, not my expertise, but asking you, is your Make in India working in that aspect?
I think it is. And I don't think so. I mean, let's leave the marketing aside. I
Right.
think Indians have understood that Make in India is going to be crucial. And what we must also be mindful about is that we are going to see a big influx of population who are going to move from a primary occupation like farming to a secondary occupation like industrialization. So the job creation for them and the skill creation for them is only going to happen in industrialized manufacturing setups and not high-tech setups where quality of education is going to be there, which unfortunately these people will not have at this first generation of transition. So moving these people who are going to transition from primary jobs to secondary jobs and into stable environment where that stable income is going to ensure their next generation is technically very sound is something that we have to enable. We must not forget that urbanization sometimes blinds us from this challenge that is there 50 kilometers away from us in urbanized environments. So if they are taken care of, then I think urbanization will also reduce. We will have better quality of life in the rural areas as well. And we will actually have a more stable India, which is the rural India, and which sometimes we don't market well enough, but that is where the future is.
I love where you're going with this whole theory, but just to kind of make it more granular and more rooted in actual benefits, would you be able to cite a policy or a benefit that your business could take in the last year saying, hey, this policy change really changed the way we thought about a process or a product or the business in general for your own business?
So our industry as a whole was made available to the PLI subsidiary.
Okay.
And the PLI, which is the production link incentive, where it came in from the center as well as the state, where there were many set-offs that came in, and that was got to do a lot with the top industries, where they were expected to float that into their auxiliary and OEM suppliers and tier 2 suppliers. So I think that worked brilliantly, simply because many people, including us, actually increased our investment into the idea because we were being, promoted for putting up plants and setting up infrastructure. And when that actually happened, we created more ambitious plans for ourselves. So that truly benefited. And I think that because we were able to transfer it to the bottom of the pyramid, that also created more micro entrepreneurs who were also able to grow. Because just with our scale, they were able to grow. And I think that is the top-down approach, which I think works very well in India, where, if you have a mid to large operator who's like a 500 to 1,000 crore player, if the government mechanism is able to enable them to move from 1,000 crores to 5,000 crores, every supplier who's a 2 to 20 crore supplier is going to go from, has a chance to go from 20 crores to 100 crores.
It just spawns a micro ecosystem around,
So you spawn the ecosystem and you reach the bottom of the pyramid because of the percolation, which is very natural.
And then it's also kind of like, then it's a cartwheel wherein you have higher employment.
And then you're just generating greater
like
quality of income at the bottom of the pyramid. And that is going to translate where Indian mindset is simply about right fundamentals. That will translate into a more educated generation ahead. And a more educated generation is going to help us progressively be at the cutting edge in the next decades and after 2050 as well.
If I were to tell you what is one of my personal pet peeves about the whole urbanization theory and industrialization, and it's very concentrated to very small pockets. Like you will have, like Mumbai is no longer industrialized. I mean, it's a financial hub. The industry moved out.
Correct.
Pune is currently, and I should say Pune because I'm from Pune. Pune is getting concentrated. My bigger fear staying in a city like Pune is that we are going down the Bangalore way, wherein we are bursting at the seams. We are going to get oversaturated, and probably at a policy level, I don't think so. We have figured out infrastructure or
Yeah.
there's any plan to that madness that is going to come on. One of the things that a wish list could be that we decentralize industrialization. It may come with its own limitations of transport, logistics, all of those things. But if we were to benefit the hinterland in a long sense, then this decentralization is of big importance to me personally. When you look at it from you are a very manufacturing oriented industry. You are sourcing your milk from Sangli, Bhilavdi is where your origins are. So you understand this layout very, very well. And that's why the question to you is, there are two aspects that we are talking about. We want to develop India uniformly, equitably, not uniformly. Uniformly would be a bad idea to do that. Equitably. Sustainability is going to become a big challenge. It's
Correct.
a buzzword any which ways. So what are those policy things that you are thinking in your mind when you talk about all of these ideas?
So, what I would say is that, let's take a 40,000 feet view
Right.
of this.
Right.
And why it is important is simply because for anything to survive, we need talent. So I think one of the big challenges that I see with Pune is that right now we are at a confluence where we don't necessarily know the way ahead, is in terms of the industry specialization that we have.
Mm-hmm.
We have a great software and tech industry in Pune. We also have a great manufacturing industry where we are the Detroit of the East.
Correct.
Now, a engineer graduating from a college in Pune, even a automobile engineer can be hired by IT. But an IT engineer will not necessarily be hired by an automotive company where if they are not a brand, they are just a OEM manufacturer for
Right.
them. They don't need an automotive IT talent.
Correct.
Now, the same graduates from same year are going to have such a different level of salary structure because a OEM can never have the same as a software. So this disparity itself is something that I feel needs to be addressed. And that is why we now need to move away from the degreed idea of education to skilling idea of education. And that way first build technical skilling centers where we are not simply creating degree holders or graduates for elections, but more from the point of view of talent, which is going to propel the next generation of growth for the country. So can we have a decentralization in terms of talent creation itself, where the heavy industrialized talent can be at different locations and the high-tech talent can be at different locations, and that is directly proportional to the cost of land and also the size of land holding that we do. The fact is that an industry to generate 1,000 crore revenue requires a minimum 10-acre land maybe. Unless it is high-tech, high food or something, like a vaccine or something. But if just for the thumb rule, for 1,000 crore revenue, you need 10 acres of land. Software industry sometimes can generate 1,000 crore revenue in 2 acres of land.
Absolutely.
And that is why they can afford that 2-acre land in a prime central location inside the city, but an industry simply cannot afford that. So let the industries move to the hinterlands of the country, where the cost of real estate is not very expensive. But secondly, you also are going to have a good talent availability there. And who's actually going to be employed in the industry is mostly people moving from primary jobs to secondary jobs, just as I said. So why don't we focus on skilling the primary job holders to be good enough for secondary jobs to be created? And these secondary jobs are directly getting employment in industries which are actually getting good subsidies to set up plants there. And technically de-risking our ability of moving raw material which is heavy for the industries to easier areas in the future. And then move the high quality, high margin jobs into the city. That itself will take care of decentralization of a lot of talent. And secondly, the labor, which actually ends up staying in the most unhygienic mechanism inside an urban environment, they will actually have a better dignity of life.
So this is all wishful thinking, but do you think the whole aspiration that I want to live in a city kind of contradicts this whole theory in that sense?
So that is where my point is that why aren't we spending enough mechanisms and idea towards making sure that besides the size and the glamour, access to resources should not be a challenge about going to cities.
Right.
access to good quality life should be there at every village level.
Absolutely.
And equitable access to good quality of life as a measure, where a internet connection, 24-hour electricity connection, access to good talent, access to good education should be something that we must think at a taluka level.
It's very funny that you mentioned this because just the previous episode that we recorded,
Yeah.
Swapnil Rao,
Okay.
who has migrated from a city,
City,
like Mumbai
correct,
and
correct.
starting living the farm life.
Correct.
So case by case basis, there's aspiration of both kinds.
Yeah, I mean, my father always used to. So he was born in Milodi. He stays in Pune.
Yeah.
But that way, his heart is still in Milodi, I would say. And that way, I would not understand that when I was younger. But now I understand that. I know that I rather see myself living in a more isolated township, or not even a township, a small village where the air quality is better, because I feel that is a more luxury that I can afford to my kids than going to a fine dine restaurant in a city, because that is something that is great, but then it is coming at a cost which is unfathomable. So I think I see more and more benefits coming into the rural life. Just that if my access to anything crucial, especially healthcare and education, is improved, I think there is no reason why I would not do that.
Because I really liked what you said before. We have to go away from the degreed approach of education to a more skills-based approach. There's nothing that can replace skill. I mean, degrees, who's looking at resumes these days, any which ways, you're asking. So the whole idea of creating skill-level institutes, because like what I'm saying is, how many food technology institutes exist in India? Probably a few handful, and they're graduating an X number of students. But if I see the whole snack, we were talking about snacking in the beginning, the amount of startups that are coming up, the level of skills that should be existing in the market are totally absent. Not a young startup is not going to get ready talent who understands food processing from day one. So those are the things that we are talking about.
But let's also look at it from another point of view. Like, I was 2 weeks back, I was part of the so I'm part of the EO network, and we host a Global Student Entrepreneurship Awards. And I was a judge in one of the competitions for the regional level. And I've been part of this judging process for the last 7 to 8 years. And the talent we had this year, especially even in the branding space, was phenomenal.
Oh, super.
And I was so mighty impressed with the audacity that this talent had, because they were not wondering that how can I take on Procter and Gamble. They didn't worry about it. How can I take on HUL? They had no fear about it. So this fearlessness that I see in today's talent is brilliant. Now channelizing this fearlessness into a very, very statistically driven mechanism where they just don't fail is something that the ecosystem also needs to invest into. But that's why I think the talent is not going to be a problem. But secondly, I think more and more confidence has also come into the mindset of the current 20-year-olds, that building brands is not a difficult thing to think about. Executing is a totally different topic. You and I know the struggle of it. But the fact is that they want to create brands and they envisage themselves to be brand owners is a very, very positive step in the Indian entrepreneurship ecosystem, I would say. But if that is the case, then how crucial is brand and how crucial is manufacturing when it can be outsourced in today's times?
Yeah, so I think you're getting into a zone wherein we are seeing a lot of white label things.
Correct.
So it started with the electronics.
Correct.
I mean, if you went to buy a ceiling fan a few years ago, you would see the same model with a different label, or a mixer grinder. You see the same design, the same molds, the same tooling, probably a color change, a different logo, and you're selling. So this whole trading thing is where probably I was expecting the whole Make in India. And more recently, our Prime Minister said, Abhi time aa gaya hai, design in India. And we talked about that in a design thing. So is design in India? And when he says design, it's not the look good part of the design. It's like the whole R&D design part that he's talking about. So we are also looking at what policy changes are coming that helps people or organizations commit more funds to R&D.
The biggest problem this way, and that is where policy intervention is needed, is on the legal speed of justice.
Okay. Enlighten us more, because legal is the word that we are talking for the first time in this case.
But speed of justice is what I want to talk about.
Right.
So we've seen Sunny Deol, Tariq pe Tariq. The reality is that is still the case in Indian courts.
Okay.
We recently had our Honorable Chief Justice also talk about the fact that there is so much backlog
of
and
cases.
how they are trying to prioritize and speed up things. But the fact is that imagine an average design in India disciple who is coming from a small town in Madhya Pradesh, for example. But they have made an idea. They have been able to secure a patent for it as well. Now, if there is a patent infringement that happens on it, or there is a contract where that patent has been licensed to use for somebody, and they are not getting the right compensation for it, and they go to court.
So getting the patent itself is a 2-year process.
But that I would still say is okay, because that is, your research also takes that much time. But if when you have the patent, but your patent is infringed,
I understand where
and a
you're coming
corporate
from.
is going to misuse your talent and your patent idea to leverage money and feed off on the profits of it, and say that, let the court decide 30 years later. क्या होने वाला है? By that time you will wear out, because we are a corporate, we have the bank balance to sustain it out. How do we enable that guy or that girl in that village to be confident enough to say that, I am going to create a patent, and when I create a patent, I am going to be leveraged fairly by the industry to make people's life better? Can you enable that? Can we enable a mechanism where that can be established? And if that is established, the culture of research will come to India. Because our Indian population graduating from Indian colleges is going to many Western countries and creating patents for them. So I find that as the biggest challenge, that our talent is creating patents for different countries, and we are actually only using them as contract manufacturing ideas or technology transfer. So that has to change. So India should actually be creating billions of patents when we have this kind of population, and we are not doing that. So protecting them by justice is where I think there will be protection for patent creation. There will be a mechanism for fresh ideas to come. And then that way we will leapfrog all these challenges which are especially coming on the sustainability side.
Well, I totally agree with the legal side of things with you. I'm not disagreeing with you there. But do you think people have appetite for creating grounds up research ideas in India itself is what I'm... So I'll give you an example. If I have a choice to do grounds up research and come up with a product idea, versus if I know I can make money faster by just trading, by sourcing a product from somewhere, building a brand on a source product, the other idea may feel more lucrative from an entrepreneurship survival perspective purely. So entrepreneurs, startups in the early phase are all about survival.
Correct.
And at that stage, this may look more lucrative.
Correct.
Is the argument that I'm coming up when I say...
But that is where we need to come out of the mindset for short-term gains.
Right.
And the social media outcome of instant validation. I don't think so businesses can ever be geared up for that idea. And entrepreneurs need to change their mindset where the idea is about building something that lasts beyond your lifetime. And not necessarily it remains in your ownership or not. I'm not talking about that aspect. But then can you create something where you're fundamentally creating better things than what they are today as a business model, and making sure that they last longer than your lifetime? I've been fortunate enough to inherit one. Right. But now my biggest challenge is that how do I keep this spirit alive when I am at my 80 years of age? And that is why I'm thinking on that aspect, and which is where that instant validation that is coming with today's idea that hey, we are a unicorn, but we are negative on cash flows. I don't see the logic of it. So why don't we look at sustainability of businesses as well as a factor, build very, very strong fundamentals that our Indian culture enables us to do, and actually create solutions which are India centric itself, because we have 1.5 billion population to consume on multiple aspects, and not necessarily just consumer goods, I would say. So many things. So that is where the sustainability aspect and the leapfrogging aspect of our economy is going to come into the picture. And the desi jugaad that we talk about, I think that jugaad is actually a leapfrog, if you look at it from a different point of view.
Right.
But we have to enable that with the legal safeguards so that that leapfrog actually creates that jump. And where I keep talking about that 6,500 to 10,000. How can we leapfrog that in one generation is where I think the credibility of India going into the next century will be.
Any particular industry domains that you look from when you talk about this? I'm just putting it in the background. Like these industries will really benefit in the coming years. Anything in your focus, in your crosshairs?
So I would say, I think there is no challenge in terms of FMCG being one of the key industries with rising per capita incomes, rising disposable incomes. Sure. We are going to consume, but we are going to be very picky about how we consume. So how do we innovate that? And just like at Chitale, we have the target that, how do we improve nutrition per gram? How can startups think that way? Is something that is about the sustainability aspect of it. Okay. Second, I think where we are going to see a widespread revolution is in terms of healthcare and medicine. Okay. I think the access to good quality healthcare in India is still a challenge. Just today morning, I visited a primary healthcare center near our factory simply because we wanted to congratulate the doctor who was doing a very good job there. So industries congratulated him. But that way, there is so much to do there. And the fact, whatever I saw there was eye-opening for me, because I was like, so many things are happening with such limited resources. They can even do better if that is done properly. So that healthcare aspect is going to be very important. And that way, I think the medicinal aspect of it is going to be where I see India is going to be creating a lot of revolution. And that way, beat many of the challenges that the current world is facing. Because low cost engineering and low cost innovation is part of our DNA. So how do we enable that to the world and actually use that as a diplomatic mechanism is something that we should be thinking about, is what I feel.
I totally agree with you on the healthcare aspect. I have slightly deeper footprint on the healthcare side
Yeah.
of things. And I think what we are seeing is a big change from earlier, all the investments in healthcare were happening at a tertiary level, not in India, globally. So you were spending a lot of money to extend your life by a few months, where the quality of life was anyways poor.
Correct.
Now the world has realized that the bigger impact will come at a primary or a pre-primary
Absolutely.
level, preventive. So you will see a lot of AI, digital. In fact, a lot of startups are coming up in the Ayurveda space. And I'm loving that fact because I had recently had a revelation in terms of what the ancient knowledge is going to bring forward. You
In
mix
fact,
it
I'm invested in one.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of I'm betting big on the whole Indian healthcare revolution myself. I like that. The second space where I think a lot of innovation. We're just looking at domains and saying, hey, where would I love to be if I had the means to be there, right? The whole infrastructure space, I love it because that space, to the best of my knowledge, has not seen revolutionary innovations in that sense. So it's been mostly labor-driven, old technologies with some modern infusion and all. But I think that segment is poised with the amount of thrust that we are going to require in infrastructure. And the third, which you mentioned before in our earlier segment, is climate change. I mean, and I'm not coming from a very greenwashing perspective. I think climate itself can be a great business. A very capitalistic idea of a great business is what
I'll tell you an example. I met a startup, a student startup from Chennai, where this boy was from a village and came from a relatively modest family. So the grandmother still used to cook on a chula, and that way she became asthmatic because of blowing air into the chula. So he created a smokeless chula. Now that is innovation which is very Indian centric, but that way that person with the right patents, which we are helping him achieve now as an ecosystem of entrepreneurs, I am hoping that so many people who don't have a formalized house or a formalized access to right quality gas and heating systems and cooking systems, this kind of innovation is what will impact the health of the person there and ensure that that grandmother, if the quality of life at 75 is bad, at least that bad can happen at 80 instead of 75 because some small incremental changes happen there.
Right. Any big sustainability related investments at Chitale?
Well, I think we have been invested very heavily onto the solar, the biogas, the wind part of energy as well. We have also been I have been personally quite bullish on the idea of electrification, especially on fleet management, because we operate a lot of trucks and vehicles all the day. And that way, I do see a very, very measurable impact happening because of fleet mobility turning to electric at a cost overall. But I think now the challenge is that, how do we at a total electrical level are able to create power at a more efficient level? And see that it's not simply about complying to global standards, but it is simply about making Indian solutions which are world class in their approach and which make the benefit of our equatorial zoning very well.
Let's do one thing. Since the Public Policy Festival is right around the corner,
Correct.
I think a lot of that theme is going to be what happened last year.
Yeah.
So why not just reflect back on 2024? We are 3 days away from welcoming in 2025. What were the big incidences that are going to change policy going forward? What are the big ones that come to your mind?
Well, 2024 was such a momentous year for the world. I was just hearing Palki Sharma, and she made a very good point which I want to repeat, which is that the world witnessed 50 elections.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great statistic.
50 elections in a world. It was the year of the elections as it was being touted. And of that, over 75% saw a change of power. So you can imagine 50 electoral mandates where, at a 75% ratio, there is a change in power. Imagine the fulcrum of all of this resulting into policy changes.
Oh.
So no matter whether you are left-leaning or right-leaning or centrist or whatever it is, you want to do something different than what has been done before.
Right.
So if 50 people are thinking at that way and trying to influence what is happening at the world level, it is just crazy. So amidst this, we have a war happening in Europe.
Yes.
We have a challenge happening in Middle East.
Middle East.
We have a typical rapid expansion of China happening, where it is not growing at its own pace internally, so it wants to destabilize across the world. We have a big change happening in UK. We have a big change happening in US.
And we are in a troubled
yeah.
neighborhood as a country.
Correct. And Indian neighborhood has never been this rosy.
Yeah.
So, just imagine the repercussions of all of it. And amidst this, our country has been able to put a stable government into the picture. Is itself a sign that we as a population are a thinking population. We might not be educated population, but we are a very thinking population.
Oh, absolutely.
And we underestimate the power of Indian people that way. So if people are thinking that very well, how can we reward this thinking in a positive manner is where I think India needs to accelerate its efforts. And if that is to happen, we cannot have a very centralized focal approach. We need to have a decentralized, localized approach, because the local challenges of thinking are very different. And that is a outcome that we see with the Maharashtra elections and Haryana elections and what the center is looking at. So how can we enable local population? Just like how we think about how can we ensure that we don't make Bakarwadi only for Maharashtra, but also for India. And if that requires a local change where, Palak Bakarwadi will do better in Punjab and a cheese Bakarwadi will do better in Kerala, we will be okay with that. So how do we do at a policy level where we empower locally is something that we need to think about, because they are the ones, if given the right tools and ammunitions, they will propel the nation forward.
But
And
I want to
I
go
believe
back to
that.
your earlier data point. I
Yeah.
was unaware of that statistics.
Yeah.
50 countries went into
Correct.
election, 75% change of power.
Correct.
Because the whole narrative was Trump has changed and that's why the world is going to change.
Correct.
At least the headlines on
Yeah.
everything says that,
Absolutely.
right? So we were so focused on one particular nation, but this 50 countries,
Correct.
it includes France.
Yeah.
It includes some of the major economies in Europe. And India didn't see the change
Yeah.
in power.
Correct.
So there's a lot of equations that are going to change.
Yeah.
So the whole foreign policy itself becomes the biggest policy amongst
Correct.
all of this, because
Absolutely.
we don't know what those equations are going to play out.
So all of these permutations, combinations into 50 into every multiple is just so many combinations coming into the picture
Yeah.
that we have to be patient about it, because we are already in the middle of a war,
Yeah.
which can spill over anyways. So I don't think so anybody benefits from war, because loss of life is not a great thing to achieve as a tool. So how do we sort of de-escalate all of this, just like India has been de-escalating with China now, is something that I hope the world sees in 2025.
That was a very positive move
Yeah.
in that sense. Because we last year we went to Ladakh and we could see the tension, we could feel the
Yeah.
tension, or we were narrated tensions
Correct.
by the local population. So that is one good thing. Coming back to the whole memory of 2024, that is a great statistics, by the way. The 50 change of power. What other things stood out for you? Any big
think-
promises from the government that stood out for you?
Another big factor that I've seen is that that way the government of India has been very active in engaging with foreign powers for improving trade diplomacy.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been fortunate enough to be part of some of these delegations, some of these interactions as well. And I see a genuine intent happening towards the idea of making things in India, selling it to more modern countries across the world, and actually creating trade ties where we are creating jobs, we are creating trade, and we are creating a sustainable mechanism for growth.
Right.
So I am hoping that many of the things that have been formulated or put on paper, they are formalized further in 2025, where we have active free trade agreements working for the Quad, working with EU, working with UK, and greater engagements in the Middle East and Africa, and seeing how we can bolster onto our strategic benefits with the Quad as well. So how do we play that out faster is something that I am truly hopeful about. And another factor that I've seen this year was also on the fact that, I personally believe that society doesn't really progress all the time with technology and engineers and innovations. It functions because of thinkers, poets, and also sports, I would say, in India. And we had a very good year at the Olympics. So I think that is a sign of a maturing economy, where I am truly hopeful that while cricket continues to be the game of choice in India, more and more parents aim at putting their kids to be scholars, not simply in engineering and PhDs, but also in literature and thinking, and also in sports. And we actually create a more rounded generation ahead of us who are contemporaries in every sphere and not simply about tech. So if that is something that we are able to do, we will have more thinkers thinking for society and progressing the society forward as a collective effort. So I truly hope we capitalize on this and we create more gold medalists from India.
What more comes to your mind internally?
Well, internally, I still feel that we still have a distrust in India between governing and population. And this probably comes in from, say, 800 years of foreign rule that our country has witnessed, where we have come to not trust whoever is in power. I think that needs to go simply because it's not helping us. But if that is to be the case, I think there needs to be a very, very rapid or disruptive unshackling of the bureaucracy and the bureaucratic structure that this country has. And we need to think about a mechanism where that social status of government job should go. Government job should be something that is natural, and public servants or public service is something that is a right every citizen should get. The entitlement that is still coming with that at not maybe at the center level anymore, but at the state level and at the taluka level and at the district level, I think that needs to change, and that is why I believe that government should also focus on putting more initiatives which are corporatized around it. Where I would say the passport seva is one of the most excellent case where the bureaucratic hurdle of it has completely gone, and it has actually speeded up Indians getting passport. So why can't we have more and more agencies which are privatized and actually enabling their job rather than enabling their status, serving the citizens? And the government needs to actively push that as something that I believe.
So we are now kind of getting into 2025. You will be discussing a lot of policy. You've got some excellent speakers, some keynote speakers representing the top think tank of the country coming and speaking at the festival. What are you bringing as a wish list to them going into 2025? You mentioned part of them. The reason I am repeating my question again is, are there something more specific saying this for this sector, we would love to see this discussion for this particular effort, which has been in a limbo for so much of a time. We would like to see some acceleration and things like that. Is there a specific wish list your team has made for this festival?
So I'll talk about a couple of themes around it, because I think the themes are crucial. And that is where the inclusion of the panels is going to be very important. So we have a few cabinet ministers who are going to come from the state and the center. We have a chief minister who's likely to come. We are looking at bureaucrats who are going to join. We are looking at scholars and PhDs from different sectors. We are looking at economists. We are looking at climate change warriors and climate change activists, and also climate change scholars who are all going to be part of studying the impact of all of these. We are going to have people coming in from the social sector where, how do we actually reduce the disparity in our country, to the point where we are going to have industrialists coming and talking about certain industries and large scale policies that are going to impact the country. So the mix around it is that we don't simply want to make it about business, but it is about making sure that the business achieves the goal sustainably. And that is why all stakeholders who can make an impact into it are going to come and talk about it. And the conversations are going to be triggered around balancing this out, where India creates its own sustainable socio-economic model of development, rather than adopting just westernized capitalistic models, or simply following what the socialist trend that we have suffered at times for. So how do we progress? By engaging every stakeholder and creating a catalyst around it is what this festival is trying to hope to be.
So for the audience who are unaware of what we are talking about, every year the Pune Public Policy Festival gets hosted in Pune. It is happening on the 10th and 11th of January in Pune. You can find out all the details of the event on www.pppf.in. You will see all the speakers who are going to be there, and it's going to be a very productive, hectic discussion of policies and ideas with some of the brightest mind that India can represent. Back to Indranil. Indranil, we wish you a very good success with the Pune Public Policy Festival.
Thank you.
I think it's becoming a beacon of policy. I'm not aware of any other such festival. So my best wishes for you and your team. May it resound into some grounds level execution and not be a discussion of any sort.
I think the more we do it, and we are also seeing a very positive response from the politically elected representatives coming to wish and talk in this event as well. So I do truly hope that our team is putting up a commendable show there, and that way we create a platform where a lot of thought leaders emerge and thought trends emerge, which translate into something meaningful, and where there is a equitable benefit for all of it.
So for now, if you have a burning idea or a question, put it on Twitter, put it on social media, and tag PPPF in it, and your voices will be heard and tracked down.
Yeah, we are supremely proactive on
Yeah.
listening to what's happening there.
Yeah.
And I think there's also part of being at Chitale Bandhu where our customers voice a lot of opinion on Twitter. So we take both opinions of PPPF and Chitale Bandhu seriously on Twitter. So that's something that we track.
Yeah. We wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
The Bakarwadi will remain a favorite for years to come, but we are looking forward to all the innovations that are coming out of the Chitale stable. The
Absolutely.
portfolio is brimming with ideas, I understand.
And I will be happy to host all your team at our plant sometime soon.
Super.
Yes.
Thank you so much
Thank you.
joining us on today's episode of 42 Talks.
It's my pleasure.